For our gospel text today, I'm actually going to use a little different text than this, what's listed in your bulletin. It's actually the text right before this text. And this is, just so you know, this is the story that happens right after Easter morning. So this is the Easter afternoon text. Okay, so you know what we're dealing with here. And this is the Road to Emmaus text from Luke 24. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And Jesus said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" Jesus asked them, "What things?" And they replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem all of Israel. Yes, and besides all of this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women from our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then Jesus said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer all these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, Jesus interpreted them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near to the village that they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So Jesus went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, he blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them. And then immediately their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening up the scriptures up to us?" And that same hour, they got up and returned to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told him all that had happened to them on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is the gospel, Lord, for you this day. Thanks be to God. Join me in prayer. Dear great and gracious God, as we come before you this day, we ask that you help to open up our hearts and our minds to understand how much you truly love us. In your name we pray. Amen. Again, I'm Pastor Chris Manke. It's good to be with you. I actually have one of our board directors here as well, Alex Chura, who's also the president of HEPATA. So we are blessed that we have a board and a president with us today. So it's good to have you with us as well. So we're glad to be with you and talking a little bit about Outreach for Hope and the ministry that you're already very well aware of and you're participating in as one of our ministry partners. So it's good to be with you. I want to start off with a little bit of a difficult ask of all of you. And that's to close your eyes and to think about a question I'm going to ask you. If that's too much, you don't need to close your eyes, that's fine. You can still think about the question, but if you want to, that'd be great. And this difficult ask is, I'd like you to think about a time in your life that was really, really hard. I hate to ask that of you, but I'm not going to ask you to share it. I just want you to think about it and hold it during this sermon time. a second question that goes with that is, who are the people that came alongside you during that really hard time in your life? Like I said, I'm not going to ask you to share those. I'd just like you to hold that image, that story, as we go through this text today. Like I said, this text is the afternoon of Easter morning, right? What always takes place Easter afternoon, I don't know about you, but that's usually nap time for me. So after a big Easter morning, it's good to, after lunch, take a little nap. But imagine what these disciples were going through. Imagine what everyone that had just witnessed all that had taken place Holy Week. You know, seeing Jesus ride into Jerusalem and people proclaiming him, Hosanna, the King, the Son of David, right? Waving palm branches, laying their coats down, welcoming him. And then things go south rather quickly, right? And the tides turn against him. And we have the overturning of the money changers in the temple, and Jesus challenging the leaders there, and they gathering because they've been waiting to do this for a while, and they hand him over. We have Maundy, Thursday, where he gathers his group together, his disciples, and they have that meal. And we have a meal that represents it as well, where we think about what he is doing, giving his life for all of us. Right? And then he's handed over that night, and they've witnessed all these things. They know what it means to be handed over to the Romans, to be scourged, so badly that it takes you literally to just about dying, so that crucifixion can go faster, right? And then to see him on the cross. This is their teacher, their Lord, the one that they truly believe will change all of Israel. But things haven't gone the way they hope, right? They think he's going to be a new king riding in and getting rid of the Romans. But Jesus has a whole different way of doing things, doesn't he? It's not the way we in our world would think it's going to be. And so I'm sure there's confusion. I'm sure their hearts are broken. I'm sure this is one of the most difficult times in their lives. And as the history goes, when a leader is crucified, typically, who are the next ones to come after? You come after the followers. And so they're hiding. They're afraid for their own lives. And so this scene that's taking place as they're walking to this road, it says about how far away? About 7 miles away, right? I don't know about you, but it's a long walk for me. And as they're walking, this really interesting miracle takes place. This person starts to walk with them. And it's almost kind of comical when you read it, right? Because as they're walking along, this stranger starts to walk with them. And for whatever reason, I think it's because Jesus didn't want them to recognize him at that moment. But the stranger, it says, starts to walk alongside. And the stranger says to them, so what are you talking about? It's kind of one of these, so what are we talking about today? And they're like, are you serious? Are you the only person in the entire area that doesn't know what's going on? And of course, this is really kind of comical when you really look at the big picture, because he knows exactly what's going on, right? He was in the middle of it. It was to him. But he says, well, what things? What are you talking about? The things about Jesus, who we had hoped was the one to redeem all of Israel. And let alone, it's the third day. And he forecasted that he would be handed over. And then things really got weird this morning, because some women of our group went to the tomb. We know the story, right? This is the gospel according to Luke, the way it gets lived out. When the women get to the tomb, it's empty, and they're distraught, because they've come there to clean the body and anoint the body and for proper burial. And the body's gone. And then they have these angels that say that, I also think kind of a funny phrase, why are you looking for the living among the dead in the cemetery? You know, the living don't hang out here, right? Jesus is alive. And they're not sure what to do with this. They go back to the group, right, who are in hiding for good reason. And they say, we were there, we saw angels, and we know the scene, right? Peter and John run to the tomb, and they find it just as they said, and they walk away just amazed. And in between, right after this text, or right before this text, Jesus appears. It should be after this text. Jesus appears to the group again. And then the text we had that I was supposed to preach on is the ascension, where Jesus shows up, and they go up to Bethany, Mount of Olives, and Jesus ascends, right in front. So all this stuff is going on. But as they're walking along, they're still very confused. And Jesus starts to open up for them all of the Old Testament, and how all of the Old Testament has been pointing to Jesus, right? Pointing to what God was going to do in Jesus in the world, right? Not the way the world assumes it's going to be, right? Get rid of the Romans, right? But instead a new kingdom, a kingdom that's in our hearts, right? Something completely different. And so as they're walking along, they finally get to this little community of Emmaus. By the way, the village of Emmaus kind of disappeared off the face of the map. We're not sure exactly where it was. People, of course, once it became known as one of these places, they said, oh, it's right here, and we've got some things to sell you. You know, the Emmaus plaque, right? You got to get one of those, right? But this little village, we're not exactly sure where it was. 7 miles from Jerusalem, you can kind of do a radius and try to figure out where it was. But when they get there, it looks like he's going to keep going on, right? And they say, wait, we want more of this. Stay with us. And so he comes in and reminiscent of what we do in the breaking of the bread, sharing the cup. He lifts up the bread, he breaks it, and as soon as he does, suddenly he's revealed. You know, this amazing, they're like, it's Jesus! And as soon as he does that, he disappears. Can you imagine what that was like, right? After all of this, they're like, whoa, how did we not get it? How did we not see Jesus? And as quickly as they have gotten there, what do? They go all the way back. How far? 7 miles. I don't know about you. This is like running a marathon, if you ask me. But the excitement and the energy, they cannot wait to tell the others. When they get there, we've seen Jesus. And they say, we've seen him too. And then right after that, Jesus appears again. All of this is going on during this time. It says in our text, as soon as he ascends, they are in the temple. They're not in fear anymore, right? They are excited to proclaim to whoever will listen that the Holy Spirit has come, right? That they are on fire to proclaim what Jesus has done in our world. Now, I asked you to think about that really tough time in your life, and what that was like. And I'll tell you my story. It was during all 3 of the births of our children, and they're here, they're healthy, they're grown adults now, so we don't need to worry about them that way. But each of the 3 pregnancies was very difficult, and all 3, my wife had to be on bed rest for 3 months with each of them. So that's tough. You know, the first one was hard enough as it was, right? Staying still, being on medication, trying to delay this baby. All 3 were born at least a month early, but they were all safe. You know? And it got harder with the second one, because now we've got a little one running around that doesn't understand why mom has to lay down for 3 months, right? And it got really hard when we had 2 kids that are 2 and 4 at that time, and mom has to stay still. And that was a really, really hard time for us. And I'll never forget The people who came alongside us during that time, right? The people who walked in and said, "Can we take the kids for the afternoon?" We're like, "Yes. Take the kids for a week. That would be great," you know? Those people meant everything to us, right? Really helped us to get through it. And I would say, in a lot of ways, they really took on what it means to be Christ to each other in this world. You know, this text has this amazing thing about not recognizing Jesus. And I'm not sure why that was at that time, but I'm kind of convinced that Jesus is all around us, living out in so many different ways in our lives, right? We don't often see him, and I think part of the problem is that we don't look for Jesus. We don't look to say, "There he is," you know? Right? I get it now. We in Outreach for Hope, a group of us did with Marquette a collaborative movement called the Examined Church. I don't know if you've heard of this. They did this program called the Examined Church, which is essentially a very simple thing. We all studied the Examen of St. Ignatius, which is just a very simple devotion. And it can be done in lots of different ways, but the way we did it was you start your morning out by, as you get up, just what are all the things that you could give thanks to God for? You know, just take a minute and thank God for those things. And lift them up. And then, second, think about the things that aren't going so well. The things that are really hard right now, you know? Lift those up before God too. And then, third, think about the emotions you're feeling. You know, what's all going on for you? Where's your head? You know, what's all happening for you? Are you excited about the day? A beautiful sunny day? Are you nervous about something that's coming up? Are you worried about something? What is it? Lift that up before God as well. And then finally, take it all and say, "God, here we go today. And all the things I have to give thanks for, and all the things I'm worried about, and all the feelings I'm feeling, be with me in all of them." I'm convinced when we do that work, we start to look for God. We start to look for God in our daily actions, right? I had an example of this where I had a really busy day, and I had a lot of things lined up. And I was worried about it, but I was excited at the same time. Once I got through the day, the end of the day was going to be one thing after another. My son needed me to come and help him buy a car. You know how that always goes. But I was excited to help him out with it. And then right after, I had to go to a funeral. The Synod staff couldn't participate in this funeral for a leader in the church. And they said, "We're all busy. Could you go and deliver a message for the bishop for this family?" I'm like, "Sure, I can do that." So I was kind of nervous about that. You know, I got to read somebody else's words and in front of a whole group of people celebrating this person's life. And so a lot of stuff going on. As I went to go start to do these things, I get to my car, and my car is dead. It's like, great. You know, this is terrible. And so I'm really upset, but I have AAA, and so I'm like, okay, call AAA. We'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm like, all right, fine, 15 minutes, I'll wait. So I kind of had to wait, sitting next to the car, and so I sat down, and it was a beautiful summer day. And as I sat there, I thought, I should do the exam. And I started thinking about all the things I have to give thanks for. And I'm like, my son asked me to help him buy a car. That's pretty cool, you know? And that's exciting for him. You know, I'm excited for him. I get to go and be with people that are celebrating a church leader's life and all that they've done. You know, that's a wonderful thing to give thanks to God for. And I thought about all this stuff, and I'm thinking, I'm thankful I have AAA. Somebody else is going to come and handle this for me. You know, took them like 2 seconds, right? That was wonderful. So I had all this stuff, and I started to think, where is God in all of this? You know, in all the people that I'm experiencing today, and how God is moving in my life. I'm just convinced that we forget to look. And isn't that important for us to do? Because as we do, we see the many different ways that God is at work in our world. helping us and letting us help each other, right? That's a wonderful thing to be able to help, because I think when we do, we're just as blessed as we were to someone else, right? Those things. You know, I get to be the person that talks about Outreach for Hope, and I think most of you know about Outreach for Hope. Generally, okay. So Outreach for Hope is a ministry of our synod, and originally it was set up to help fund our different inner city ministries, urban ministries, doing the important work that they do. But I get to be the one that talks about the incredible things they do, walking alongside people that are quite often finding themselves in some of the most difficult phases of life, struggling just to, especially as we're seeing right now, put food on the table, right? Care for their families, be there to pay the rent. Our ministries do that work every day. And it's such a blessing. I was at Hepatha this last Sunday. I know we have someone else that's an expert in Hepatha, right? And what a blessing to get to experience the ministries that they do. Pastor Mary Martha's so gifted at being the person that just kind of moves around the room during worship and lifting up people, celebrating the simple things in life, celebrating a good score on a test for one of the kids, celebrating the work that the leaders do, celebrating the lives of the saints at Hepatha. And that's what our ministries are all about, right? Proclaiming God's goodness, even in the really hard times of life, right? Even as we go through some of the most difficult things in our lives, we have things to celebrate because those people that walk alongside us, or the chances for us to walk alongside someone else's life. We know in the midst of all those times, God is right there, even when we don't see God, right? Those blessings of life, those blessings of the times that we get to be a part of the incredible work that God is all about in this world. So this text reminds us we need to look for God daily, and that we get to be a part of the magnificent enterprise that God has for this world. Caring for each other, being there with each other, and also being supported when we are going through those really difficult times. It's a both and, isn't it? Because we all have them as we lift it up in our thoughts today. We know those times. And we also know what it meant to be cared for, to be there for each other through those times. We give thanks to God for how God walks with us every day, whether we see it or not. But often it's in those times when our hearts are on fire. That was one of my favorite phrases from this text. Weren't our hearts burning within us while he walked along with us on the road? When our hearts are on fire, we know God is with us. And that's a beautiful thing. Let us pray. Dear great and gracious God, we give you thanks this day and always for all that you do for us, for how you bless us each and every day with your presence, and how you call us to be your presence for someone else. Bless us in the work that you've called us to do. Bless us as we receive the gifts of one another, and help us to be your people, reaching out to each other so that all people might know your love, your grace, your mercy. We thank you this day and always for all that you do.